thanks very much for being with us today and giving us a chance to chat to you about church planting, particularly in Western Australia, and how you're finding it. Now, your church has been going for a few years now. Could you give us a bit of a snapshot about where you were when you came in and where things are today?
Okay, we're looking at about 3.5 years that we've been going now. When we started, we had a group of 8 people, 8 adults, plus my 4 kids, so that's 12 actually, 12 people. And we started in what you might call a boganish type area of Perth, a place called Forrestdale near Armidale. And basically, it was a place where we lived. My wife and I had lived here for a long time already, for about 8 years already, and that's why we chose this area, because we knew the people here, and so that's how we started. Very small. It was a small group plant or a core group plant, whatever you want to call it. And since then, we've grown numbers-wise to about 35 to 40 people. A few of those being people that have transferred from other churches, or backslidden Christians that weren't going to church for a long time that have joined us. But about 5 to 6 of those people are also new Christians as well. That includes their kids as well.
Sure. Can you give me a bit of a perspective check? Give us a bit of an idea of what the real difficulties are, say, associated with your area. So, are you dealing with transient populations, or are you dealing with a very unchurched area? What's the culture like?
Yeah, that's a good question. We do have a lot of fly in, fly out workers. So we do have a lot of mothers who are by themselves a lot of the time, which makes it very difficult to connect with men well. That's a one issue. I think overall, actually, we have a lot of single mothers, even if they don't necessarily have fly and fly out husbands. A lot of them just don't have husbands that are with them anymore. We've got a lot of divorce, a lot of separation, and so we're finding that the bulk of the people that we're reaching are single mothers, or just single ladies as well. And so but that has raised problems, because it's been very difficult to then get other men to come into the church as well, new people, because they see that we have a lot of women here, but they don't tend to have a lot of other men here that can connect with them on the same level. Other issues, there is a lot of drugs in Forrestdale and Armidale. We have a lot of dysfunctionality around the drug issue, and there's just a lot of kids here who, on a Friday, Saturday night, we just got kids out in the street till early in the morning, running amok just because their mums and dads are just not there, or just not looking after them, or are high or drunk. Yeah, there's a lot of dysfunctionality to do with drugs and alcohol. Yeah, I reckon they're probably the biggest ones, actually.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you've seen growth, though, and you're just saying, though, that obviously there's some transfer growth. Yeah, that happens with every church, wouldn't matter which church it was.
Right.
Then there's also, some unchurched people. Where's the actual growth coming from? What sort of people are say, being contacted who might not normally darken the door of a church?
Definitely, yeah. I reckon probably the biggest draw card that we've had as a church is the local kindy and the local play group that many of our mothers, including my own wife, have been part of for a long time. We've seen most of the new converts come from that, actually. Mothers who have been looking for a community to be part of, and they've seen that there's a play group there. The play group and the kindy aren't a church-run thing. They're just things that many of the women in our church, in the core group, what happened to be in that right from the very beginning.
So you've got a cultural presence, in it. It's not necessarily a ministry, but there it is.
Exactly, and we've sort of hijacked it a little bit. And that's been one of the main areas. For instance, just on Sunday gone, we just had one of the ladies in church, Cindy, who's a new Christian, got baptised. She gave her testimony, and she said one of the things that drew her to Christ was, I'm not just trying to give my wife good points here, but was seeing my wife and just how she raised our kids and looked after our kids and loved them, and she was just drawn to that. She could just see there was something different about Nadia that wasn't in her and in many of the other ladies around her. And that was one of the first things that drew her to Christ. Yeah. So that's been a major way in which people have come to Christ in our ministry context. You go on.
Oh, well, I was going to say, you've actually made a very conscious choice too to plant a church. Now,
Yes.
And I guess people would say, like there are supporters. Obviously, Geneva Push is one of them, and there are people who would have a differing opinion about how to go about getting growth. What made you so sure that church planting was the way to go ahead, particularly for your area?
That's a really good question, because I'm not 100% sold on that church planting is the only way to go. I don't believe that. The mother church that planted us, Willerton Christian Reformed Church, they have great evangelistic ministries like introducing God and that, and I've seen those things, and I've been part of those things, and they've worked. I've seen people come to Christ through those. In our case, we decided that we needed to plant a church here because we just we weren't present in the community enough. That was the key thing. We were always going out of this community to another community, half an hour down the road, ministering in that context, where we saw that there was a call to minister here. And the model that we very much to this day still follow is what you might call like a home church, crowded house type model, with differences. But we've just immersed in the community, trying to have connection with people as much as possible to maximise those gospel opportunities.
Okay, so I guess cultural connection is what it's providing in a way that you couldn't get any other way.
That's right. You always have that. You always get that if you're living in a particular area, but we've just maximised it as much as possible. And that's why planting a church was crucial for us here, to make sure we were here all the time working.
Is it fair to say, now I don't know the area well, so consider me ignorant, but is it fair to say that there was also a dearth of opportunity for people to connect with Christianity in the area? I mean, it sounds like it was pretty hard ground. How many other ministries were on the ground?
Yeah, well, none. There hasn't been any. Armidale is the township about 15 minutes down the road, which is a bigger township area, and there was already churches working there, and they've been doing a great job. 4 or 5 different churches, actually. But here, there was just nothing. Nothing at all. In the time that we have planted, there has sprung up about 2 or 3 other churches, which has been great. Most of them are gospel-centred, Bible-centred churches, so that's fantastic. So it's growing in that sense. Other people have realised that there was a need in this area and have addressed it as well. I think does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It actually raises another one. Is it as simple to just plant more congregations? Like, is that going to actually? I mean, let's take the conversation a little broader. You're part of a much larger discussion in Australia, which is how are we going to arrest the decline of Christianity? As far as it's up to us, under God, how are we going to arrest that decline nationally? Is it just a matter of getting more churches into places like Forrestdale, or do they have to be a particular type of church? If we're going to have an impact nationally.
Yeah, they definitely have to be a particular type of church. I don't think it's not a mathematical formula of just plant more churches and straight away the gospel's going to grow. That's not the case, because if those churches being planted aren't gospel-centered churches, you're just going to multiply more of what you had before, and it'd just be inner growth, which is a good thing, kids growing up in the church and that type of thing.
But a culture that'll die off in its own time.
Exactly, that's exactly right. Like I said before, that's why I'm not 100% sold on church planting being the only way. It has to be, no matter whether you're a new church or an old church, you've got to be gospel-centred. We've struggled with that ourselves, even in the last year and a half, actually, that we've been going. Hard things have happened in people's lives, babies have come along, and it's just been very easy to sort of start, just getting into a cruise control mode again. And before you know it, you've lost your gospel priorities and worship priorities, and which gives birth to mission more and more in our lives. And just seeing that in ourselves, it made us realise, hang on, we're a new church plant. Well, we can just as easily slip into becoming just like the average church that doesn't look out to the people around them. Can happen very, very quickly. And
so if I understand that, it's not just a matter of connecting culturally and it's not just a matter of creating an opportunity where there is no opportunity, but it's actually having this outward focus. This what would you call that? This need to replicate, or this desire to see people called in. How would you phrase it?
To tell you the truth, I think I've become more and more convinced and convicted that mission comes from an overflow of a worshipful life. If your life is God-centered in every way, Christ-centered in every way, mission is a natural outflow of that. I'm 100% convinced of that. Because if you're worshipping something else created, you're just naturally going to fall into the ebb and flow of life that everyone else has. Worship the footy, worship food, worship drink, whatever it could be. If you're worshipping God and God's heart is for the lost, you will just naturally follow that. And so that's what we've come back to, been refreshed in that, and we're starting to realise that I think it's inevitable. It's an inevitable result of being Christ-centred. Yeah, does that help?
It does. That does. It helps a lot. Ollie, mate, thanks heaps for your time.
Cool.
And what our viewers don't realise is I've mucked you about a bit with the time difference too. So thanks very much for being able to help us out. And we really do hope that, and pray that the work in Forrestdale continues and goes from strength to strength. It sounds like you're doing it. It's hard yards, but they're well worth done for the kingdom. So thank you very much.
Pleasure.
See you, mate.